second budget work session. Today is May the 29th. Yesterday we did go through a presentation from HR with regards to the pay plan. I do know that some questions were submitted. We did get some answers back. We will continue to compile answers from those questions. Any questions that were submitted, please know that you can find them on the SharePoint that's on nashville.gov. So please make sure that you all are checking that to get answers to the questions. For today's activity, we're going to start going through the actual wish list, just essentially like page by page, and talking through what the requests from the various entities are. We're not talking funding sources just yet. We are, in essence, just talking through what we have listed as requests. So with that, the first thing we have on page 1 is the Arts Commission. We have $125,000 from the Immigrant Caucus, from Councilmember Vo, Councilmember Evans, members of the Women's Caucus, and Councilwoman Stiles. Would anyone like to speak to that? Councilwoman Stiles.
Thank you very much, Chair. I know that we have an opportunity to amend our wish lists, and our wish lists were due on Thursday, I believe, by 6:30, and the budget hearings went past 6:30, and it was after 6:30 when the Art Commission was giving their presentation, and the discussion about the equity study, the proper equity study that wasn't had, came up. The actual amount is $400,000, so asked on Thursday. So I would like to amend mine now. I need to find $400,000, and I'm asking colleagues if you could look at $400,000. This helps Metro Arts do the proper equity study, which will then allow them to create the rubric that will be used for grants. They have halted the grant process for this year. It's usually done last month. They're pushing it to the fall to get through everything. If they can get this money, get that study done, then they can do the rubric and they can get back to doing grants using a lens of equity, and they can back it up with what they based it on.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak on the $125,000 for additional grant funding? Okay, so the way this kind of works, if you want it, you got to advocate for it. We don't have anybody advocating for it, nobody wants it. So Councilor Evans, what you got?
I'll speak to it as far as like the outcome. If we can't locate the $400,000, really the goal is just to have more grant opportunities in light of everything that happened. Our goal from last budget cycle to increase funding opportunities, and that's not feasible to do it at the same level this time. So just to say we hear you, we know we need to fund this department better, and so there could be more grant availability, especially for smaller organizations.
I second that.
Thank you so very much. Anyone else want to talk about the $125,000? So for our colleagues that are just joining, we're on the first page of the budget wish list, and we're discussing a $125,000 a request for additional grant funding for Metro Arts. Councilor DeWitt.
So I just have a question. Since Joy raised her thing up to 400,000, would it not be better to take that 400,000 and make that grants available for income less, or we want to do it to further on out?
So if we did $400,000 for the equity study, which is kind of the basis of why they're in the kerfuffle they're in right now, that gives them the study. So it's not about cobbling information together historically. It is an organization comes in, does the equity study for the city to say, okay, here's the history, boom, 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 boom. Here's how you can do this grant process better. So as much, and initially the 125,000 again was before knowing what the cost for the study would be and wanting to give just some extra money so we could do more grants. But I also think having the rubric in place so that the grant process moves smoother makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, we're gonna end up being in the same place that we are right now, which is where's the equity study and cobbling things together. I think we're crippling them instead.
Councilor Sepulveda.
Just a clarifying question, from the 400,000, how much was for the study and how much is for the grants?
It is the study, like the 400,000 is a part of it, it's, an organization, and forgive me, I'm blanking, it's a membership to an organization, the organization comes in, does the study. This was a study that, former Director Singh had mentioned in the specially called meeting we held in December. That was the study he wanted to do last year ahead of the grant process before that vote in July, but was told he didn't have the money to do it, so he.
So we're not putting more money into the grants?
It would be a swap. If you did the 400, it would go to getting the equity study, so the grant process makes sense moving forward and we don't end up where we are again, which I think could happen if we don't figure that out.
Do you have any other questions? Okay. Councilor Sims.
You spoke about there being that the 400 would pay for membership in an organization that does these studies. Is that permissible, or would we have to go, do you know if we'd have to go through like the official RFP process to choose someone to do the study?
Interim Director Coleman brought it up during the hearing that this was a membership that the organization itself could be a part of. So it did not appear to me that they had to do a process for it. The study comes as part of the membership. And I'll find out what that is. The organization, because I'm blanking, forgive me.
And is the 400, is that the total amount for the study? I believe Councilwoman Sepulveda was getting at this.
It is, it's the study, it's the
This is
study
not
and the
additional
membership.
grant funds. This is.
No,
the study.
this is something different. My request in asking for the 400,000 instead of doing this 125 is to actually help this department move forward, because part of this debacle that we're in is about the equity vote and how did they make the determinations of equity and all of that. So if we can get that taken care of, then whatever the grant process is and how they make the determination about the funds, I mean, I think they're gonna be changing what that looks like anyway. Given the way it's set up right now, it's kind of people that expect it and then those that are hoping to get it, and I believe they're going to be looking at a process where it's everyone's hoping to get something versus assumptions. But either way, having this money allows them to create the rubric. And that's been part of the conversations in Metro Arts is, what's the rubric? How are we doing this? How do we make determinations? This study fixes that. So if people feel torn, then, I mean, if there was a way to come up with, you know, $500,000 instead of 425, and then there's still some extra funding that goes, great.
So part
I'm
of,
saying 400, but if you
I
fix some of
agree
this
that part of, well, a big underlying piece of their issues in how they did the grant funding was not having that data that would come from a disparity study. I would be more inclined to support a disparity study so that they can have that data before giving them any extra funding to give out.
That's fine, so that's the 400, that's
Yeah,
the
Because I
study.
think that's necessary.
Agreed, and that's the 400,000, so that's why I was saying initially before you'd walked in, that I had originally asked for 125 to give some more money for grants, but I would rather swap that 125 and make it
So-
400 and just handle the study.
Another question would be, how much is needed over the next fiscal year to do that study? Is it $400, 400,000 worth of work, or is it 200,000 worth of work where?
That, the 400,000 covers the people coming here, doing the study, getting the
But-
data, and,
Would all that be completed within one fiscal year, though?
oh, I will ask that question.
Can we get some information from Finance? Aaron, are you able to speak to us at all about what the arts funding has looked like this year in comparison to some of the other years, and also about what finance is putting in place to make sure that we don't have the same issue this budget as we did last budget?
Yeah, so they're funding, I don't know offhand what they received in the '24 budget. I do believe that they received some increases over their base allocation of '23. in addition to receiving the surplus funding of $2 million. So their funding was actually increased over fiscal year 23's budget, getting into their current 24 budget. Their current 25 budget projected is based as of 2024's budget, with no additional increases as requested by Metro Arts Department. And the $2 million was surplus one-time funding, so that it has been removed. So their core budget remains intact, but in two separate instances in the ordinance. Their operating portion of the grants resides in the admin account. And it's similar to what we do with General Hospital, where we add a language to make sure that, there are some checks and balances to make sure that as they go about operating throughout the year for General Hospital, we ask that they give us a report, we ask that they meet with us weekly, not in the same sense of what we'll be doing with our, but just the checks and balances of ensuring that the operations are intact, ensuring that the operations and expenditures can be validated before allocations are submitted by finance. And that's kind of the structure we got set up for arts in the current ordinance that is proposed in the recommended budget.
Thank you so much. Did anybody else want to speak on the $125,000 for more grant funding?
I have a
Yes.
question for you, Chair. When do we do the amended?
Wish list
Wish
is
list.
due on June the 6th at noon.
Okay.
As far as the additional grant funding, I do think that the equity study needs to happen. So I have a asterisk here that's something that we should definitely consider. The additional funding is going to be something that's very hard to justify support for, because we don't want what happened last year to happen again this upcoming year. And, there were conversations with the Arts Commission about how hard it is to request more funding when the funding that was allocated was not spent in the way that the council wanted it to be allocated. So that's hard to justify additional funding. So that's just my position on it. The next thing for arts, as Councilmember Coopin has $1 million for the Arts Commission, would you like to speak on it?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, Chair. And that for me was more of a kind of symbolic gesture of wanting to extend support for the arts and continuing to fund. I know they've had a lot of challenges with what's going on, but as we know, we're Music City and we need to make sure we're still supporting the arts. That $1 million wasn't really a specific allocation number. I figured we'd have conversations like this as far as where that money would go. So I'd be supportive of mine, also supporting the $400,000 study. I'd love to see additional money for grants because I think Councilman Stiles made a point that this organization's been flat for a long period of time. But I also recognize that until we have a clear process and setup, it may be hard to allocate additional grant funding. So I'm happy to, I don't know what the process of that is, but amend it to line up with what everyone else is talking about with the $400,000.
Councilor Stiles?
Thank you, Chair. And so I amendments are due on June 6th. Is there, never mind, I just answered my own question internally. However, I heard that. Colleagues, I would just like to ask, I understand people being hesitant to give additional funding. I think to substitute the $400,000 for the equity study so that, that they need for sure regardless, right? They need that whether we gave them additional funding of $125,000, that doesn't solve the greater problem, which is having the data that they need. So if we need to get rid of this 125, I'm good with that. If we can make our focus $400,000 for that equity study.
You're not the only person that requested $125,000.
No. I'm saying from my entrance of the 125.
Gotcha. Okay. Did anyone else want to speak on arts before we move on? All right, moving on to our next one, Beer Board. We have a $40,000 request from the Immigrant Caucus from Councilmember Vo and from Councilmember Evans. And this is for two staff support for the nightlife team, from the Immigrant Caucus and from Councilmember Vo. Councilmember Evans, are your two positions the same too?
Yes.
Okay, so would any of you all like to speak on that?
Mine are the same. They're just.
Oh, yours is broken. So you have 10,000, you have 30,000 for staff training and then 10,000 for office support.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the same. And
Okay.
then the appropriation is also supposed to be, but it is the same, yeah, we're good.
So yours is for the two staff, not for training and not for office support? Okay. Would anyone like to speak to that? Councilmember Cooper?
Thank you.
Wait, no, yours is on 10,000. We're not on yours yet. We're on the two people.
I think it's all this, Chair, I think it's all this coming from the same place. Maybe-
Gotcha.
It's the same two wish list items. I think they may be entered.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So these were two things that I was advocating for on behalf of the Office of Nightlife. As many know, Director McDonough of the Beer Board has taken a second position as Director of Nightlife and made a couple of requests. I think that the work he's doing is incredibly impactful. He's been instrumental in getting Safe Bar implemented throughout downtown. He's gotten one boxes with Councilman Evans, so Narcan distributed throughout downtown, so hard at work down there. There's two different positions, or two different buckets to my understanding. The $10,000, from what I understand, was a recommendation from either finance or HR. He was getting back to me on which one it was. They have a current open position at $40,000, but we're not having luck hiring, and HR recommended, or finance recommended, an additional $10,000 be allocated to that position. So the 10 would be to expand the pay offering from 40 to 50. And then separately, the $30,000 would be a budgeted stipend for outreach and engagement and research and things like that. So those both were, to the best of my knowledge and ability, came from the department's requested adjustments.
Okay. Councilmember Cash?
I am very supportive of this request. We have a lot of stuff that goes on at night, and sometimes we hear basically, that folks don't work at night, codes and I mean, they're starting to, but I've found this very effective. I think the director works with multiple departments and pulls them together in a great way. I've had some issues that I've needed help with, and they've been very successful. They've got a community, I forget exactly what the word is, somebody that's,
Stakeholder group,
I'm sorry?
a stakeholder group.
Yes. So I am very supportive of this. We've got a lot going on. Like I said, we've got a lot going on at night, and that needs some attention, and I think this is a good step forward.
Thank you. Council Lady Webb, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what would the two people be doing? I mean, yeah.
Councilmember Cooper?
So the one person would be an office support staff. So right now, it's, I think, it's a party of two at Nightlife, maybe three. We're trying to expand, so this would be an office manager support staff to kind of air traffic control requests coming in and things like that. And then, to my understanding, the other one would be a stipend for outreach efforts and research. And they, Director McDonough does a lot of work in other cities, understanding what other nightlife directors are doing. So things like that.
Council Lady Styles, did you have something you want to say?
No, I took it back.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fully
Conversations
support.
going on inside.
I mean, there's a lot.
Council Lady Evans?
I was just gonna echo the sentiments that have been shared so far. So I think that Director McDonough's position, this addition of this role, has probably been one of the better roles that the city has added, because to the point of Councilmember Cash talking about kind of pulling people together, I think that has been his skill set, and he is somebody that I think, and we need to support from a women's caucus perspective, because his assistance helped get Safe Bar executed across all of these downtown bars that were very resistant when it was just the sexual assault center going in. And then on top of that, if you overlay kind of his current effort to work with MNPD in light of the overdoses that have happened downtown. His support, again, has gotten all of these bars to agree to install Narcan 1 boxes. And that is huge because that was something that I tried to do 2 years ago and we couldn't get it to go. But his relationships are really paying off. And so I'd like to support this.
Thank you. Councilor Stiles?
Yes. In addition to these 2 positions, I mean, Benton is doing a tremendous job with the position that was literally just created a little over a year ago. But there's, to what Councilmember Cash mentioned about nighttime, that's like codes in general for the whole city. That's something that Benton is actually working on right now, which would benefit all of us to have codes, people able to go out at night and catch the infractions that are happening. So that is something that's in process, and I'm super in support of that because I've been trying to get a nighttime team for 1,000 years. But what he's done with Safe Bar and being able to be a go-between and talk to people and work with the Sexual Assault Center, I think is incredible in terms of looking at departments that have worked with different groups within ourselves. Haven't really seen that before, and he's been very open and great to work with. So I think this is easy, and it's also not a whole lot of money.
Did anybody else want to speak on it? Okay. My only, I think this is probably going to be geared towards HR who isn't here, but I will be interested in how a director can supplement a salary in that way. And since we had a very extensive conversation about pay yesterday and like pay equity, and I will be interested in knowing if that's something that's available across the board for departments, that people have the discretion of just, adding to pay that way. So I think we would need to get clarity to make sure that it could be done in that matter, but also finding out how departments are determining that. So I would be interested in seeing and getting that information. But I do think that this is a good thing. Anybody else want to speak on the beer board, y'all, or on that 40,000? Okay, Councilmember Cooper, do you want to speak on the 200,000 for the 1 boxes?
Thank you, Chair, and can I defer to Councilman Evans, who I know is working on this, and I believe the rest of the requests for this were under MNPD, so maybe I put that in the wrong spot.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to it. So in light of that, this was really stemmed from our Public Health and Safety Committee meeting last week, where Sergeant Mike Hotz, who has been out installing 1 boxes in downtown bars, so he was asked, like, how many more could you use if you had them? Because currently the ones that he receives are funded by a Gibson Foundation, the Tempo organization grant. So he's not using his own money to buy them. They're coming from Gibson. And so his request was for 100, and they cost $200 each. And so unless I did my math wrong, I put 20,000 in my request for those.
Okay, so this should be 20,000 instead of 200,000?
This is 200.
Okay. Okay, I wanted to make sure, because I also thought that this was from, I also thought that this was from their conversation, and I was thinking that it was a lot less when we talked to him, so thank you.
We need a lot of boxes.
When I saw 200, I thought, maybe I mathed wrong. I don't know. But
All right. So, a request for 20,000 for beer board for the 1 boxes.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Chair, may I add that I put MNPD on mine primarily because Sergeant Hotz would be the one who would be initiating the request. I think it potentially could be beer board. Like, I think there's flexibility in where the money lands, because ultimately the purpose would be to continue to kind of permeate, throughout the city outside of this Gibson grant.
Awesome, thank you. Council Lady Gamble?
Thank you, Chair. Just for my own clarification, I must have missed it. What are 1 boxes?
Yeah, and thank you for asking. So it's a little box. We can get a demo, and so I'll be sending an email email out about that, but basically it is kind of all-encompassing. It includes Cloxato, which is the kind of supercharged version of Narcan nasal spray, and then it also has a little video component that pops up, so that way if you don't know what to do, because typically, like if you're going through, you would normally have to go through a training to be able to, like receive Narcan from the state, for instance, or through a grant. But this, it's all encompassing, and so it's a little box. It's installed, downtown, kind of near, a lot of times like where defibrillators are, those kinds of things. And then you can pop the lid up. You can watch the video if you need it, pull it out, and then go ahead and administer the Cloxato.
That sounds wonderful. One more follow-up. Where would we be putting these warm boxes?
So currently, he does not have enough to fulfill requests because there's been so much news attention.
So who is requesting? Where do we get a request
Sergeant
from?
Mike Hotz. If you go back and watch Public Health and Safety this last meeting, there's about 25 minutes of him talking about the issues. Downtown, we had the largest spike that we've ever had in one day of overdoses and 2 fatalities. And so 8 of the folks that overdosed happened to be in the downtown kind of one clustered area, but then there were also overdoses that happened in different parts of town because essentially we had some drugs that were adulterated, with a higher concentration of fentanyl, and so it caused overdoses. And so he wants to be able to then use kind of the use case of, here are all these bars on Broadway that are installing these, let's like get into Midtown and kind of spread out around town, so that way it's not all concentrated in one area.
So it would be at bars and restaurants, that
Yes,
kind of thing?
anybody that would take them, basically.
Thank you.
With the priority being kind of in the areas that have high incidences of overdose.
Gotcha. Sounds like a great initiative. Thank you.
Council Lady Evans Sequel.
These sound great. I'm curious, sort of ongoing costs, it's medicine, so how often does it expire, and do they have like a plan for kind of making sure there's not like a stale one in some random restaurant that?
Yeah, so it takes a little while, well, let me go back and just reflect on my training experience when I went through. When I received mine, it does have an expiration date, and the expiration date that I had was 2 years on the particular one that I received when I went through the training. So to your point, the boxes are like a permanent fixture. It is the Cloxato or the Narcan or whatever is going to be inside that would need to be the ongoing follow-up. And so there does need to be kind of a consistent conversation about where is that coming from. The health department does have access to more, Narcan or Cloxato to use. And so I think it's really making the connection between health and Sergeant Hotz about how would they be refilled. I did ask a question in the committee about, like, how would you know if it had been used? And so there's a tab on the outside that whenever you pull it, then you'd be able to tell from the outside if it had been either tampered with or whatever. And so so I just need to make sure that if Sergeant Hotz decides to win the lottery and move on to something else, that there's something that we're considering about who's checking these things and making sure that there's something in them in the event of an emergency.
Any other questions on that, y'all? Council Lady Kimbrough?
Do you have an extra
Wish
budget
list.
request? Thank you.
I think is it
They're all
something?
gone.
The ones down there are gone?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're all gone.
Can we pass some of those down? Thank you. Okay, we're gonna pass these down. Councilmember Huffman, we're gonna designate you the sergeant at arms, so when people come in, you need to make sure they get one of those. All right, that concludes all the beer board requests. Any others, y'all, before we go on over the codes? All right, starting off with codes, we have a $300,000 request. So the Immigrant Caucus, Councilmember Vo, and the Minority Caucus and Councilmember Toombs, these look like, and Councilmember Harrell, Councilmember Coopin, Councilwoman Sepulveda, Councilwoman Swerve, Councilwoman Welsh, Councilwoman Stiles, these all look like the same positions, and I believe that Councilwoman Benedict also has this same request. So it's worded a little differently. I believe that these are all the same requests. So Council Lady Sepulveda, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair. So this would be to fund new positions under the Codes Department. That would be one executive director and one inspector. As you all know, we had been working on legislation for over a year. This is what it would take to staff it. We know that in the first year, we would have to set up the board, and starting off with at least those two positions would be ideal. To fully staff, we are looking at a total of 4 inspectors, and that would be the goal for next year. But for this year, my ask is for the executive director and 1 inspector. We did have a conversation with the codes department. They were completely fine with this living under their department. We talked with legal. We've had sign off from various people. So to give you an idea, for an executive director mid-range salary, it would be a little over $200,000, and that's including benefits. For a compliance inspector 2, for the salary including benefits, it would be a little over $75,000. So rounded up, the ask is for $300,000 to staff those positions. And why is this needed? That would be something I should probably say. We are one of the most dangerous cities to work in the South when it comes to construction. We've had a number of fatalities. We have injuries happening pretty much every single day. We have wage theft going on. We're currently looking into a wage theft case at Howard School. It's being renovated, and we're seeing it there. At the end of last year, we had a young man who was 20 that died falling through the roof of Glencliff High School. And there is a possibility that we are going to see lawsuits in the next couple of days. So we need to set the standard of what our metro properties should look like. We're allowed to audit our own contracts. And so the director would direct inspectors to audit those contracts. If we happen to see any OSHA violations or any other type of violations, those will be referred to federal agencies. We know that we have federal agencies, but they are understaffed, so we would also be providing that service. So that is a general of what we're looking at. We have looked at this in other cities. The LA School District currently has a similar setup. Seattle is working on it. St. Louis has worked on this in the past as well. So all of that information is taken from cities as well.
Thank you, Councilor Sepulveda. Would anybody else like to speak on this? Councilor Eva?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I fully support this budget request because, I mean, the other day I just went out with codes to go around my neighborhood, and, you know, I know this is with our building inspections, but we just don't have enough, like, staff, and I think, you know, this is so important. It's about saving lives and, you know, our workers in our city, and so I think that this is really important and it addresses a problem that we need to focus on, so I do fully support this.
Thank you, Councilor Lady Welsh, and then Huffman, and then Webb. And that's Roar, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I too fully support the creation of this compliance board. And for all the reasons that have already been mentioned, particularly because we have so many unsafe workplaces in this city. And the young man died in my district, and it was harrowing, and I am the council person, and I was not told. I found out a week later at a union meeting. I was told that someone died by falling off the roof. So a lot of things are being kept under wraps. But if we even look at this very, very practically, Councilmember Sepulveda just said we're probably going to have lawsuits filed. At this point, the way we are structured, Metro is paying on both ends. We are paying contracts to bring workers in and companies in to oversee these jobs, and then we are paying out when they are not taking care of the workers that are hired on staff under the auspices of a Metro umbrella, and we are paying for settlements and we are paying out lawsuits. And it's just, that is just unsustainable, and we have to stop that so bad actors know that they will be caught and there will be consequences for that. And given how we've been preempted by the state so many times and other things that we have tried to do, this is one way that we can shine a light on the bad actors. And if nothing else happens, we can make sure that these bad actors are no longer hired and used within Metro, because we will have the data that shows these are all the violations that they've had. So I think on emotional and moral and practical grounds, this is a very, very important thing that if we get nothing else changed in this budget, this is a very, very important thing moving forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Hoffman?
You know, if greed wasn't a problem in this world, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But unfortunately, it is. And because of that, there are unsafe work conditions in Nashville. I'm 1,000% in support of this. If you go to the job site during the day, you should have some protections. It's just as simple as that. And if we can do that through this action right here, at least give a little bit of a safety net. I'm not saying we're going to catch everything, and it will be tragic when we still lose life. But if we can prevent even one person from getting seriously injured or hurt or even worse, then this is worth every single penny.
Thank you. Councilor Webb?
I'm in support of it, but I just want to throw a different aspect on it. What about since you said it was coming under the codes board, or the codes department, right? Well, you know, Nashville's growing so much, you know, one inspector it's gonna get to do a whole lot. So instead of doing the executive director this year, what about if you hire the 4 inspectors, put them under somebody that's under codes, and then you have more boots on the ground out there? I just didn't know if you had thought about it that way, because, I mean, one inspector is not really even gonna be able to.
Agree. So the goal is to have 4 inspectors, right? The number that we're seeing in LA School District, which is huge, right? But we need the executive director to also be helpful with the board itself and to direct the employees. The codes department is very understaffed, you know? They have a lot going on, and we require a specialty when it comes to this specific position. We're talking about something a little bit different than what they're used to working with. So didn't want to take positions from the codes department when we're already struggling to get through the list of items that they have to go through.
And I'll add to that too. I actually spoke with one of the entities that Council Lady Sepulveda has been working with. They called today to talk to me a little bit about this particular wish list item as well. And I asked the question, I didn't think of subbing the ED, but I thought, you know, if this wasn't a tight budget year, is one inspector enough? Do we need more? And they said that in consultation with experts that they had, you know, been working with and experts across the country, that this is the way to kind of like roll it out, because you have to like build up the department. You have to have somebody to kind of create those policies and procedures. So really having that executive director and having one inspector would be needed to kind of get us off the ground, and starting off with too many people would not be helpful at this time. Anybody else want to speak? Oh, Councilor Sora.
No, I think it's covered, and so I'm in support.
Okay. Anybody else, y'all? All right, moving right along. That was everything from code, so let's go out in the fire department. Look at y'all working fast. We may not need all these work sessions. All right, so the REACH program, $750,000, and we have that from the Minority Caucus, from Councilmember Toombs, Councilwoman Evans, Councilmember Harrell, and Councilwoman Sorora. Council Lady Webb is also supportive of the REACH program, but she had other requests also. So hers is a $2 million request, so I'll do her separately. So for the $750,000 for REACH, I'll start with Council Lady Toombs, since Minority Caucus is the first one up.
I'm actually going to yield to our Public Health and Safety Chair, who may have more information than I do.
Okay.
More specifics.
Sure, so this is on my list. If you remember 2 years ago when Councilwoman Allen was budget chair and I was public health and safety chair, NOAA was really interested in doing a program, that would eliminate the MNPD response and instead have, clinician and, EMT or some other trained response. And so we ended up using money from Metro Health to fund this REACH pilot. And so it's kind of been in the pilot phase, it's countywide, but at the same time, it's just a very small ability to respond. And so this, of course, partners EMT and a clinician from the mental health co-op. And it's very similar to Partners in Care in the sense that they're responding in times of crisis. But this has really been focused on a lot of suicidal ideation. It's like, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it's a high percentage of responses that they take are people who are suicidal. It avoids them being taken by ambulance in many cases, which saves the city money and the cost kind of associated with ambulance rides that may be eventually written off by the entity who is receiving the person. Unfortunately, I don't have a specific dollar amount that I could share with you, but that's a cost savings. And so there's interest in looking at making this pilot not be a pilot anymore, but instead expanding it so that way we have more capacity and extending the opportunity on the fire side with increasing the number of personnel that's specifically dedicated to this program because that's been restrictive as far as expansion in addition to the mental health co-op side. But this funding would go to Nashville Fire.
Thank you, Councilor Evans. Do you know if the full 750 is needed this year to do the expansion?
I don't have the answer to that, but I can find out. Unless somebody has that information, has already asked that question.
Councilor Swarr?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that one of the things, and it is important to stress is that the Partners in Care is a great program and it's working very well. But what studies have shown is that when police do show up, the people that are more agitated and actually creates more problem. That's why the REACH is an alternative that makes sure that in certain instances you don't have a uniform officer going out with the therapists or the counselors. And so that's what the REACH program does. So it's another part of it, working in tandem, but making sure that we're not criminalizing people that actually need help. That we actually, I tell a story of my daughter having somebody homeless by her door, and when she called 911, they told her to call the police department. And so that's what we do because we don't know any better. So these two program, Partners in Care and REACH, is allowing us to make sure we're not criminalizing people that need help. One goes with the police, depending on how serious the case is. One is just counselors and no uniform officers. So.
Councilwoman Allen, and then Council Lady Vo.
To follow up on the question that was asked, my notes from when the fire department spoke to us, I wrote down that they said that $750,000 was for 5 FTEs, which would allow them to go to nights and weekends, because right now it's just from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Vo.
That was my question, so thank you.
Okay. And Council Lady Toombs.
So the Minority Caucus is always in support of looking at alternatives to policing because historically policing has had a disproportionately negative impact on communities of color. And so this is another opportunity to get people the help that they actually need, to not over-police folks, let the police deal with actual crimes, and folks who are suffering from mental health issues, let those be dealt with clinicians. We've seen that the folks that are dealing with the mental health issues are disproportionately minorities and people who are dealing with poverty, and so this is just another way to make Nashville a safer place for everybody that lives here, and again, to get folks the help that they need. So the caucus is in full support.
Thank you so very much. And you sparked my memory, Council Lady Evans. So, Council Lady Allen, I'm so sorry. Allen is sitting next to Evan Siegel. I feel obligated to say Evan Siegel every single time instead of just Siegel. And Evan Siegel is across from Evan, so sorry about that. So I did have in the notes that REACH is currently running Tuesday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and that those 5 FTEs expands on Saturday and Sunday, and it will also allow them to run until midnight or so. So it will also expand how late they're running. Council Lady?
It seems like many people had picked the Barnes Fund as the source of these funds, and I just want to say, housing is healthcare, and I'm concerned that we're raiding the Barnes Fund, so looks like we got responses.
So, we are not discussing funding sources today. We're only going, I will let y'all respond to that answer, but we are not discussing funding sources. We're only going through requests, and then on a subsequent day, we will go through and discuss our viable funding options, because not all options that were listed have been viable options. So I just want to make that clear, but I do want to give y'all the opportunity to respond, but we're going to quickly move forward so that we don't get stuck. Go ahead.
So from the Minority Caucus perspective, we took the total of $5 million that was in the operating fund and replaced that with $5 million of surplus funds. And the rationale behind that was looking at the current money that's available to the Barnes Fund, which is over $80 million, and thinking about what they could do over the next fiscal year and doing more immediate things with operating funds.
In my perspective, for not bonds fund for this one, but for where I use the bonds fund, so everybody knows, is that the recommendation of the task force that you and I have put on is that we put 30 million in bonds fund every year. When you look at what is appropriated for this year, we have like 37 million. So we have 22 in the ordinance, we have 7.5 coming from ARP, you have another 5 million. When you put all of that together, it's about 35 million. And so the idea is, in a very tight budget, we cannot do less than the 30 million, but that 5 million, if there's opportunity to use it for something else, that's what we want to do. And if we have excess money in the future, the fund balance grows, then we can replenish it like we've done in the past before. So that's the thought process.
All right, thank you so very much, y'all. Anybody else want to speak on REACH? All right.
That's a great program.
Next, we have Councilwoman Soror, NFD Crisis Counselor for $140,000.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And so when we were doing the fire department hearing, one of the items that was not funded is a position for a crisis counselor. And what happens is that people that are actually going, and you're talking about this REACH stuff and what they do in the community, it's a lot of trauma for the officers that are actually going out as well. And so the chief had indicated that he would like to have a crisis counselor in-house to be able to deal with the welfare of the officers that are trying to make other people feel better. I think it's a crucial position, and I think it's something that if there's money that we should fund. And so that's what that is.
Thank you, Council Lady Toombs.
I thought they already had a behavioral health person. Am I mistaken on that? I thought fire already had that person.
I don't know, maybe this is an addition, but when you look at his list of requests and the unfunded position,
Gotcha.
this crisis counselor was listed at the 140,000 requests.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to that? All right, Council Lady Webb, we have you down for $2 million for REACH and other. Would you like to speak to what that's for?
Yeah, the fire department. Okay, so. Okay, so I'm gonna invite all of y'all to go to y'all's firehouses and talk to your firemen. We don't have the state-of-the-art equipment, and as Nashville's growing, these scenes are getting a lot more dangerous and stuff. A lot of their equipment's broke, outdated. I just threw a number out there. I didn't have a specific list of anything, and that does include the $750 for the REACH program that I'm definitely in. But you know, that money for new equipment and stuff comes out of the general fund, and everybody wants the general fund balance money. So, like I said, just go out and talk to your firemen. And as Nashville's growing, they need better equipment, guys. There's so much stuff broke that they don't have at different engine stations. And that's what I feel like, you're talking about firemen that are already on the top level of affordable housing, that's their pay. They're putting their lives on the line for us. So we ought to at least give them the best we can give them to be able to protect them.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, equipment does come out of 4% fund, so it doesn't come out of the operating budget.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be appropriate for the work of what the budget that we're creating.
Okay.
But that is duly noted that, that's a request when we start looking at, equipment. Councilor Eddie Sora?
I was gonna say the same thing, that will be covered under 4%. And I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we've done a good job of making sure that they have the apparatus and the same manpower on the vehicle and all of that stuff. And so, but all of that comes out of the 4%, so thanks for lifting that.
Well, y'all know what I will be wanting to come 4%.
Yeah, they got it. It's listed there.
Can't read it completely.
Thanks for laying that foundation.
It's like, let me put it out there.
So we are going to bypass pages 5 and 6 since we looked at those on yesterday, and we will go to page 7, General Sessions Court. So starting off, we have $104,000 for Council Lady Benedict, who requested General Sessions Housing Navigators. We also have that similar amount for Council Lady Evans and Council Lady Soror. So Council Lady Evans or Soror, would y'all like to speak to that?
I would not mind, and I think we're talking about the same thing. As far as the number is concerned, that number came from their budget hearing and the data that they actually gave for those positions. So that was the amount that was listed. But that is to make sure they have those housing navigators that they need as somebody that's worked on the eviction right to counsel program and the impact that is having and the work that is done in the community. We want to make sure that we're taking care of any aspect and all aspects that make it more effective, and having those people in the court system outside of the lawyers that we're doing with the RTC, I think will be better for our people. So that's what that is, and that number is 118,200 from the budget.
Thank you, Council Lady Sora. Council Lady Evans, would you like to speak to, for the people that weren't here, explain what the housing navigators did? I think you were particularly impressed by that presentation. Yeah, you were particularly influenced by that, so I would love to hear you speak on it.
Yeah, so the item that Councilmember Suara and Porterfield are talking about, so Judge Bell came and spoke in her budget hearing, in particular resonated because I had the opportunity to go with several community members, and Councilmember Cash was in the group, and we went to eviction court. And so we happened to be there on a day that legal aid was tabling in front and explaining to people exactly, how everything worked. But they don't go every day, and so the housing navigators are the stopgap folks that are helping people literally navigate the system, because our system is so complicated. And whenever you're in the courtroom, the judges and the staff members cannot advocate on your behalf. You have to go outside of the court for that and have those conversations independently. And so I think that we're at I think there's a tremendous risk if we don't fund these particular positions because of legal aid not being there every day to be able to help people, and not having access to somebody who understands the system, I think would be very challenging for regular residents who are going to eviction court to understand exactly what to do, what their opportunities are, what their rights are. And I think that these positions are really critical. And I think Judge Bell made a very compelling case about what she is seeing on the eviction side in comparison to some of her past work and where we're headed as a city. That also really stood out to me, because if we can't have eviction numbers increase in our county, we need to bring them down. And so if funding these positions will help at least keep some stability, I think they're really critical.
Thank you so very much. I saw Council Lady Webb and then Council Lady Evans-Segal.
I just want to say I really support this, because I don't know if it was Aaron that I was talking to, but the eviction rate, it's almost like if we don't stop evicting, the homeless problem is never gonna get any better. I think we're evicting, what, 2,000 a month, something like, some stupid figure.
It's a very high number.
And I'm like, well, no wonder we can't get the homeless under control, because where do you think those evicted people, if they can't pay the rent, they're ending up on the street, so it's a vicious cycle. So I'm fully in support of this, because I think we have to do better in keeping them in the homes that we can keep them in, and that's gonna help us keep the homeless better.
Councilor Evans Siegel.
I was just gonna say, this request came in after our questionnaires were due. It otherwise would have made it on 9. It was, I think, literally started at like 6:34 after that night.
Exactly.
After they
Evans
were
Siegel
due.
dry snitching on y'all for turning your stuff in late.
Some people turned in amended ones, and I, as a lawyer, am impressed with their willingness to like push the rules in ways that I am uncomfortable with.
I saw her hit the button at 6:29.
Yeah. I also just pushed real, and then like you're gonna send a new one 20 minutes later. No, like I would encourage anybody who wasn't there that day to go back and watch, because I thought it was a very compelling case. And these really are critical positions, and we need to make sure that they're funded either because we move it around in the budget, or that maybe there might be some surplus, it sounds like, in the court system that we could use for this. But either way, we need to make sure we keep it. And so I just, again, encourage y'all to go watch that. You can find it at 6:34 that last night.
Thank
So
you.
somebody was
Council Lady Vaughn and Council Lady Kimbrough.
Thank you, Chair.
And then Council Lady Toombs.
Yeah, I support this as well. I mean, I currently have a family that was evicted, and their family is split. The kids are living with the grandma. My constituent's living in her car, and we have been working for like weeks trying to get answers, trying to get help, and this is really affecting, like my constituents, and it's really painful trying to help them whenever we just keep getting and going around in circles and circles. So I hope that this will help that, and I just experiencing that with my constituents has been very painful, and I don't want that for other people. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Councilor Kimbrough. And I'm so sorry to hear about that, and thank you for being there to support your constituents. Councilor Kimbrough.
I just had a question, and I wasn't there for the presentation, so maybe somebody can enlighten me. I'm trying to figure out I understand that there are 2 positions, I think it was Ms. Evans that said that, and these are non-lawyer positions, and these are people that will be at the eviction court, I believe, to help. Was there any type of study or correlation to show how these 2 positions, these 2 people help reduce the evictions? Like, was there any data that we could?
Do you want to speak to that?
You can go.
No, I mean, because I was gonna say, I didn't, I got very caught up in my personal experience and may have missed the data part, but I think that's a great question.
So I don't have the data for these people specifically, but we have the data for the eviction right to counsel, where we're actually sending those people in right now to help people. And what the data actually shows, we had a student from Vanderbilt studied this for us, and it was presented to council maybe 2 years ago, is that every time there's an eviction case in court, 90-something% of the time, the landlord has an attorney, but the tenant does not. And in most cases, because of that, the people get evicted. So that was the data that we had. That was why we went into the pilot for the eviction right to counsel program. And what that program is doing, it's basically doing what these 2 people are supposed to do, in addition to the education and all of that it does outside. But because of the limit of that program, what we're finding out is they're not in the court every day, 5 times a day, 5 times a week. There are also people that don't know about the eviction right to counsel program. We're trying to get it out and get people in the community to know about it, and not everybody does. So when people then show up in the court system without an attorney, not knowing about the ARTC program, and the ARTC people are not there, somebody is there to help them navigate through all of that, and that's what these two people are for, to catch whatever the ERTC is not. And I believe they work together too. Judge Bell will tell you that she works very well with the ERTC people as well. So this is an area where she feels there's a deficiency that she thinks will help mitigate some of those issues. Now, Attorney.
Okay, so, and I understand what you're saying, because I didn't want to, I guess, confuse the two on, everybody feels like we need less evictions. You know, we all need to love one another and all that. That's the ultimate goal for everything. But I was just wondering about that direct correlation. And then what you were talking about, the rights, a person knowing their rights, we need to pay two people to make sure people know their rights. I was just wondering, isn't that something the judge should be doing anyway? If somebody comes in there without counsel? I'm just trying to make sure we're right in paying this money. Because I understand the ultimate goal is to make sure that we don't want people evicted they don't have to be. But, and maybe it is, but is this amount justified when you have judges that you're paying over $200,000 a year? They, just like your right to remain silent or your right to an attorney, like the judge is going to say, hey, you don't need to get up and speak for yourself, you need an attorney, in a criminal case. I was just wondering, not passing any judgment, I'm just, because we're kind of strapped.
I don't think the judge can make a landlord do something.
No, I'm talking about their right to have somebody represent them. I'm not talking about just knowing your right. Because basically you're saying these people, let them know their right, right? These two people are going to pay these salaries to be there and make sure people know they have a right to counsel for the eviction processes.
But that's not all they do.
But the judge can tell you, these are what your rights are, but then they send you out in the hallway to try to mediate the situation and you have nobody.
Nobody to do it.
But the landlord has a lawyer. So it's like you're talking to a lawyer and you're not one, and you're not really understanding the process. Your emotions are high because you're about to lose your housing. And so the navigator is supposed to be like average Joe person saying, hey, who understands the system, who's like, hey, let's talk about your situation. Here are some resources. Like they actually have a database of different nonprofits that they know of that help with housing, whether that's helping with rent, whether that's providing housing, to try to, if they can't rectify the situation with the landlord, then maybe they can find this person somewhere else to go. And so a judge is not going to be able to sit down and do all the things that a case manager would do. Basically, they're case managers. And so a judge wouldn't be able to sit down and do all of that. I understand your concern about data, and as a condition of funding, the council can say, hey, we need you to track this data. So when you sit down with somebody, Mrs. Jill Smith, you need to put in Jill Smith, what resources you connected to her with, and what was the outcome. Like, we can require that as a council if that's a concern, to see if we're getting the benefit of our dollars or the taxpayers' dollars. But I think that there is a tremendous benefit to having someone basically there like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Let's talk about your situation.
And you don't have to pay for it.
And and these are and it's free.
And it's
free. But because a judge can't do that with 200 people.
They don't have to
many
pay
people. Right. Well, yeah.
I see what you're saying.
We as a
we
community
pay for it.
You got any other questions, Councilwoman Kimber?
No, I was just,
Okay. Council Lady Evans and then Council Lady Sepulveda.
I just, Councilmember Suarez reminded me of one point that was made during that presentation. That was about the state law that was recently passed that reduced the continuance from 15 days to 7 days. And so that was going to shrink the ability for folks that were going through eviction to have that additional time to kind of try to figure things out before they had to come back. And that posed, from Judge Bell's perspective, a substantial concern as well, because not only dealing with all the other issues that Councilmember Toombs talked about, but shrinking that amount of time, that it really is going to compress people's ability to kind of figure things out with the support of the housing navigators, or if they don't have it, it'll really make it more challenging. So I just wanted to add that commentary out there.
Thank you. Council Lady Sepulveda.
Thank you, Chair. So just on the data point, for right to counsel, we received, the ARP committee received a report of what the program was looking like, so I'm sure that we could
It was
probably.
attached to the ordinance.
Yes. So that is available. You know, they're a little bit separate, but they work in tangent with each other. So if you ever want to have an idea of how many people have been served in a period of time, I think that would be a good thing to look at.
And I just wanted to say that when we filed that ERTC, the report, because what we did for the pilot year was actually add 50,000 to say we're going to have a report, we want a data point, and that report was attached to the bill that we passed to extend the ERTC. But something I also wanted to add, in case somebody is wondering, is that we're paying for the ERTC. Why do we need to do the navigator? I think it's important to clarify that the ERTC does not just do the attorney at the courthouse only. There's also an education piece about it. Some of you may remember there was an apartment. Remember where there was a mold and all that stuff that we went to? I can't remember Mosaic.
Which
Where?
one?
Oh, thank you. Mosaic. Where when you got there, the tenant did not even have a lease agreement. A lot of these people don't even know what their rights are. And so how do we make sure that people know what their rights are before it even gets to the point of we need an attorney for an eviction? So that's part of what the ERTC is doing. And so if there's a gap where they're not there every day because they have to do community outreach, then we don't want to drop the ball. And that's where these two navigators come in. And so we just need to make sure they're working together and that we're collecting that data. But I fully support both because it's helping a whole lot of people in the county.
Well, I have one more
Councilor
question.
Kimbrough.
Just, I'm trying to understand. So, these two caseworkers, the way one of y'all described caseworkers, so you said they're there every day. So they're there days that the court is not, they're court days and people come. I'm trying to figure out why they're there if there's no attorney. Like, what are they doing in court? Why are they at the courthouse anyway? If it's not their day to be heard on an eviction. If it's not their court day, why are they there? Why would they be at the court?
There's people there every day.
So there's
People
people
are there
there,
every
like
day.
legal aid is only there twice a week.
Right, I got that. So you're saying they're on the docket, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
People are being
Yeah.
evicted
They're on the
every day.
docket.
Okay,
Yeah.
but they don't have representation?
They don't have
Right.
representation.
Okay, so the court runs every day, and some days legal aid is there to help people, and then on the other days, legal aid is not there, but you have these counselors that are there, but they don't go in court with them, right? Is that right?
I recognize you.
So Councilmember Allen reminded me, she said they're open, they have docket 4 days a week, and legal aid is there 2 days a week. So yes, 2 of the days a week, there are people coming in who may even be entitled to legal aid, but they don't yet know about that, who are on the docket to be evicted. And these people would be there to help them get that assistance that they need, or otherwise to give them information about how it works, because they're showing up to get evicted. And you know how it is, right? They're just all sitting there row after row after row, and their name pops up, but they don't understand the process or know what's going on.
So they like get a new court date and come back?
I don't know how that's gonna work. Oh, yeah.
We can direct it.
To Judge
We can direct these questions to Judge Bell.
Bill, if you can make the list, we'll get the answers to it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could send your list of questions to Director Darby, Director Darby can then make sure that or Maria?
And Maria.
Maria and Director Darby, and then they can get the questions to Judge Bell. And then just as a reminder, colleagues, when those answers come back in, they are on the Q&A on the SharePoint so that everyone benefits from getting the answer. Also, thank you to our Public Health and Safety Chair, Chair Evans, for passing around candy. She cares about our health. She does not want anyone to become hyperglycemic. She doesn't want our blood sugar to get too low. So please feel free to help yourselves. Those are coming around the mountain. All right. Next item, we have Council Aide Evans with $7,500,000 for Judge Blackburn's mental health court capacity planning.
Yes, So, I believe I'm the only person that requested this, because I'm probably the only person that knows about it. Judge Blackburn will be in Public Health and Safety on Tuesday.
It's on here.
To this item, I'm sorry?
They left Women's Caucus list off.
Oh, okay, perfect. So, what this is, so if you remember, the late Jillian Ludwig, when she was killed, there was an effort made by her family to advocate at the state around mental capacity and incompetency. And so this has been a big topic of conversation this last legislative session, because essentially, you know, the way the prior state law was written, people would get some minimal assistance, they would be released. And so that's one of the things that occurred in that particular case. So now that the state law has been changed and there's going to be more of a focus around this competency designation and kind of what is the process for evaluation, the potential for in-person or inpatient stays, and hospitalization and every other potential treatment that could come as a result of somebody being deemed incompetent, because there's the folks that are deemed incompetent that with assistance, they can be able to restore competency, and then there are people that are deemed incompetent that will never be able to have competency restored. And so Judge Blackburn, whenever the budget requests were, the internal requirements for budget submissions, this did not make it onto her budget request because of the timing of the process at the state, when the request was required to be submitted. And so this has kind of been an outstanding item that she knew she was going to need to advocate for. But the $75,000, essentially, it's to really pull some planning together around this issue at the state level and at the local level, to be able to pull all the stakeholders back together and look at how Metro government is going to be able to process these cases more effectively across all these different stakeholders. She's going to be looking at how they can reduce unnecessary jail time and look at what the alternatives are to jail time, because jail costs per person, and I wish I remember the statistic, but Sheriff Hall spoke to what does it cost for every night a person is in jail versus, you know, when they're getting treatment someplace else. And so that is one of the areas that they're going to look at. But they also really need this planning opportunity to be able to determine what infrastructure needs are going to be required for our city, because they're likely going to need like some interagency dashboard and reporting and a variety of things to make sure that they are compliant under the state law. And so the $75,000 would go for planning purposes and paying essentially the person to be able to pull all these people together, do all this documentation and figure out, here's the plan, so that way in time for the next budget season, if there is a need for funding for these items, she'll be in a position to be able to make those requests and also start to source, you know, what federal opportunities there are for funding. And so this is kind of what this is about, and you'll hear more if you come to Public Health and Safety on Tuesday, because she's going to speak about it there.
Thank you, Council Lady Evans. Would anybody else like to speak on this one?
I had a question.
Council Lady
I
Kimber.
think you said she's gonna clear it up Tuesday
I said she's coming to committee on Tuesday to present about it.
to talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you said it's basically for like a study?
It's basically for her to have a consultant. See, the way the funding was allocated last budget season, it was allocated for like the training components to be able to do the competency restoration. But it didn't allow for any funding for any planning. Like she had to spend money directly on, like, I hate to use patient care because I don't think it's really the right terminology, but she had to spend it directly on the person that had the competency status question, and she couldn't do any planning with any of the funding that she was allocated for this particular competency docket. And so I had gone, I think at the beginning of the year, at the tail end of last year, and met with Director Crumbo because I wanted to know, could we amend the budget ordinance from last year to be able to allow her to redirect some of this money to do this work earlier, and we couldn't do it. And so then his recommendation was wait till the next budget season, and then it became the next budget season, and that's where we are.
To council staff.
This one, first one, okay. I'll put it on the amended list.
Okay. And can we also make sure that we have on there Steve has a no.
I just left one off.
And you added one, because
That's what I mean, look, all right. I dropped a ball or two, so.
I'm not on any wish list, so I just want to make sure that,
Yes, you are.
no, I'm not supposed to be, because I did not authorize being on any wish
I
list.
talked to you, but never mind.
Okay.
On the floor.
Know your brain.
On the floor.
All right, next
I
one,
didn't say
next
I
one.
was
Let's
signing
keep
off on
going.
it. Councilor Kimbrough.
You want me to get your
And maybe I need to talk to Joy afterward, because I was wondering, is that something that we all have to agree on the list, or is it?
You can talk.
Yeah, I will speak with you about it later.
Can talk to Joy after.
I didn't do that one. That one was not
So we're gonna let
mine.
Director Darby, chime in here. Go ahead.
I will just remind all council members of the Open Meetings Act, which would require you, when speaking about legislation and many other items, because most things lead to legislation, that you need to speak in a public forum, a publicly noticed forum. Thank you.
Yeah, or you could use Council
Council
Connect.
Connect is a perfect place to go to speak.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk to her. I don't need to. All right, I'm sorry.
Reminder for all
I apologize. Joy, I do not want to talk to you. Okay?
All right, the next item we have, did anybody else want to speak on this item before we move forward? All right, Council Lady Ewing is not here, but it's a $60,000 for the Tennessee Justice Center, position to prevent loss of insurance.
I have it on mine, and I don't know why my name is not listed. I actually brought it to the Women Caucus.
Okay.
It's in two different places. You dropped the ball.
That's the issue. Nope.
Yeah, I brought it to the Women Caucus, and the caucus decided it.
So, wonderful, beautiful, amazing, gracious colleagues.
Yes, ma'am.
Our council staff worked so hard to compile the list of over 20 council members that decided to participate in this process over a holiday weekend through various challenges. So sometimes something may get missed, y'all, and we are so sorry. We apologize in advance, but sometimes something get missed. So if you just wanna, it does, it happens. So if you just want a +1, just let us know, y'all. We this is the opportunity to say, hey, you know, I support that too. But I know it's a couple of them that got accidentally left off. So, Council Lady Sword.
Thank you, and kudos and thanks to the council staff. But I just wanted to speak to it, because it was something that was discussed at the Women Caucus, and we decided to do it. This was something that was funded last year for the Tennessee Justice Center. This is a position that they have that actually help people in the Napier Sodocum Center as they're trying to reestablish their healthcare insurance, navigate what all of that look like. That's what the position is for. And so Oh, okay. Yeah, so they are worried that it may not be funded again, and so we decided to put it on our wish list to make sure that the services that they're rendering in that community continues. And making sure people have their insurance and navigate it well.
Thank you. And before I call on Council Lady Toombs, on page 20, under nonprofit, Council Lady Sword, Council Lady Welsh, the Women's Caucus, Council Lady Allen are all listed, and Council Lady Sword, you're on here again, the Immigrant Caucus and Council Lady Vo. So when they compile these wish lists, y'all, they compile them based on the department that you wrote. So this particular council member wrote it as General Sessions Court, which is how it ended up on General Sessions Court page. So if you wrote it as nonprofit, yours is under the nonprofit list. So just for acknowledgement, multiple people signed on saying that was important to them. So I got Council Lady Toombs, Council Lady Allen, and then Council Lady Evans.
So considering that we funded this last year, is the intent that the city fund this every year?
At least for now, it's still needed, yes.
Okay.
At least for this budget, so we'll deal with future budgets as it comes. But for now, there's still a need, and there's no other source of funding for the continuation. So that's my understanding for this budget.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry for speaking out of turn.
All good. Council Lady Allen,
I'll
and
say
then
two things. One, last year, I believe this was funded under health, just to further confuse things.
Put it on there.
I don't know that that matters. And then I would say this was, the need is here because the state of Tennessee is currently going through a purge of TennCare roles, and this was an attempt to ensure that people knew how to provide the correct documentation while that was going on. Hopefully, that will not go on forever. I don't know. But it was kind of in response to a temporary thing that's happening, so I think there's any insight.
Thank you, Council Lady Allen. Council Lady Evans?
Councilmember Allen actually answered my question.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I did also want to remind everyone, like, as we're kind of talking through this, and again, we'll talk through funding sources on a different day, but some of these items, as we're looking at like funding, there have been some conversations about can certain things be funded out of like ARP money, or if something has already been ARP money that has not been already spent. So I see you shaking your head over there, but it's money that, anyway, just bear with me till we get to it. But there are some additional opportunities of some ways that some of these things could potentially be funded. And so when we get to the funding sources, we will have some additional conversations about that and figuring out if this is something that should go into like reoccurring operational budget, or if this is something that we should look at another allocation of like one-time funding for. All right, anybody else want to speak on this one? All right, next item. Did you raise your hand, Councilor?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to give a little bit more information why they were requesting the $60,000. The grant that was provided to them from the city last year, they're able to help a little over 450 families, and they were primarily with TennCare and SNAP issues. So the economic values of the benefits was almost $1 million, and once all the cases are closed. And just so you all know, excuse me, I'm trying to get the most important, is that the issue was most of the time people were losing their coverage because of procedural issues, and so they were able to intercept and help the families to better understand and get them the services that they needed. And of course, them being in Napier, Sudicum area, they were able to help a lot of families in South Nashville and low-income Nashvillians.
Thank you. Anybody else on this one? All right, next we got Council Lady Gamble, $500,000 for the expansion of Rafa Institute's Accountability Restoration Conferencing ARC programming. Council Lady Gamble.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this program, basically what Rafa Institute does is partner with the General Sessions Court and Juvenile Court to conduct voluntary conversations between someone who has been harmed in a case and the person that has caused that harm. And this program has been helpful in reducing recidivism for offenders. Once they understand the impact that their crime has done to the other person, it has helped reduce that. And so they are wanting to expand the program. I can't remember, and the director of Rafa Institute is here right now, Mr. Travis Claybooks, and I know we can't hear from the people in the public, but he does have information on how many people have been impacted by the program and how this would expand the program, how many people they would be able to serve by expanding this program. But again, they get the referrals for youth who are participating in this program as well as adults who participate in this program from the General Sessions Court and the Juvenile Court. And so I am requesting that we add this additional funding to those courts so that they can serve more people in that program.
Thank you, Council Lady Campbell. Did anybody else want to speak on this one? Council Lady Evans?
Oh, sorry, did you want to go?
I didn't see Council Lady
okay.
Sora.
I had this listed on my wish list as well, and I think kind of reviewing the information from Rafa, this really speaks to kind of the community safety initiatives that we had from the last council term around funding initiatives that are going to help break some of the systems that we have in place that are negatively impacting youth. And so that's one of the reasons why I supported it. I just went to a convening for a grant that's going to be on our agenda this coming week that Health Department received specific to community safety. And so these are the kinds of programs that other cities are doing across the country, and we need to be able to support kind of these things that are breaking those cycles.
Thank you so much. And I see Councilor Evans has it. It's under nonprofit, Rafa Institute. And it got bundled in with something else. So you have it for $316,085 for Rafa Institute. And Councilor Gamble has it for $500,000.
If I can speak to that, actually, we got a request from Rafa Institute that had a total of, I think it was $618,000 for the total program. I kind of rounded it down to 500 program with the, so $500,000 with the idea that, you know, maybe we can't do the entire 618 at this point, but how many would 500,000 serve? And also taking that out of the Metro Health Department Community Safety Fund, which currently has about $3.3 million for partnering with community organizations to implement programs to help reduce crime and help address violent crime in our area.
Thank you, Councilor Gamble. Councilor Swerve?
Thank you, ma'am. I do not have it on my wish list, but I do support it. I think as we're looking at community safety and alternative to policing, we cannot arrest our way out of every crime. We cannot put everybody in jail. We have to look at what are the underlying causes of some of these things and how do we fix them. And so these community safety programs are tools, violent interruptions. Those are things that are actually helping us look at the root cause of things and not just trying to look at the symptoms. And so I'm very much in support. I would say that, and I'm going to put a plug in for myself, this Saturday, my budget conversation is actually about public safety, and Mr. Claybrook will be there along with some other people in the community, Gideon Sami, Jamel Ghosh with the Varsity Program, Ron Johnson, people that are actually doing those kind of things. I think we need to understand all the array of programs that are out there, and we need to look at that $3 million and start to fund them rather than have the money sit down for years without us using it. So this is going to actually help the community and help the kids, and these are the kind of things that I think we should be doing. And the money is there. We just haven't allocated it or put it anywhere for some time. So I'm in support. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Webb and then Councilor Allen.
Can we get data? I know, I think I talked, is this the gentleman that they're here in the building?
Yes.
Yeah, but in their office in the building, or? No. Can we get data on what he, that sent to us? I'm not real educated about it.
Sure we can.
Thank you, Councilor Webb. Councilor Allen.
And I was just gonna say, I'm fully in support of this as well. It's a fantastic use of funds to save us from spending money on jails and things like that down the line. There's also a great This Is Nashville episode that includes Mr. Claybooks from Rafa and Judge Calloway, just talking about this program, so you can get some information about there as well. Can't remember the date, but I'll put it on Council Connect.
Thank you, Councilor Allen. All right. Anyone else on this one? All right, next item, Councilor Gamble, $208,000 for General Sessions Court, 2 FTEs in the Music City Community Court, Traffic School Program, Restore Reentry Court Program.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this request, and I think you already talked about it. I didn't list it as housing navigators, but that's what it is. It's the 2 FTEs, the 2 housing navigators for General Sessions Court, and also they had submitted a request for 108. So for the 2 positions, it was
$118,200.
Right, $118,200, and then the second request was for $50,000 for a General Sessions Court Traffic School to address internal staffing needs and concerns. The traffic school desires to retain an outside vendor to provide certified instructors to conduct both in-person and virtual classes. And then the third item was for $40,000 for an investment in the MCC program, the Music City Community Court Program, which they have a Restore Reentry Court for returning citizens, which assists defendants in getting their records expunged, getting driver's license and things to re-enter into society after leaving incarceration. And so they're asking for $40,000 for that program. So that's where the total of $208,200 comes from.
Thank you, Councilor Gamble. Would anyone like to speak on the traffic school or the Music City Community Court? Councilor Kimbrough.
I just want to say this little part, because you mentioned the expungements, and that used to be my baby. I myself have filed expunge over 3,000 records, and I just...
You said 10,000?
3,000.
Oh, congratulations.
I don't know how many now, but I've done so many expungements just because people didn't know. But there was a point, and I don't know if they came from I think it came down from the state that became the rule of law or whatever, that the judges, and they started it for a while and they stopped, they were to inform people before the court whether or not they were eligible for expungement. And they actually had a little summary they read. They stopped for whatever reason. But expungements shouldn't really be costing. You know what I'm saying? It really shouldn't be costing. That should just be just part of
Staff
it.
to do it, not necessarily pay for an expungement, but to pay to have.
If you're eligible to have your record expunged and you're in court, the judge is there, the clerk is there, the defense attorney is there, and the prosecutor is there. That's all you need for an expungement. And if they're doing their job and informing the people like they should, we shouldn't be paying extra money for this. I mean, I take exception to expungements because that's my baby, you know, but if everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, there shouldn't be extra money we need to tell somebody you need an expungement. If you're in court and the judge is doing what they're supposed to do, and it was a point for a while they would read it out in court, but they should let you know. And you can get it expunged, you can start the expungement process right then if they're doing what they're saying, because it's the clerk who does it, you know, who starts the paperwork, and they're in court. Everybody's in court the same day. And if you do that, it would be no need. But anyway, just keep spending the money.
So if
So
I could just follow.
I'm gonna respond, and then I got you, Councilor Gamble, then Councilor Seward. I think I thank you so much for lifting up that point. And I know nothing about this, so let me just say that I'm not an expert on this. I think that people who don't take advantage of it at that time, who 6 months down the line, a year down the line, 3 years down the line, who now are saying, I would like to restore my rights, and they don't necessarily know, you know, how to go about this. I've talked to several people in the community, and I've directed them straight to Clerk Howard Gentry's office, because me as a council member, I know that I could tell somebody to go there, you know, Monday through Friday to get this, but a lot of times people in the community don't know. But when they see these flyers with like Project Return and Urban League and trusted community partners that have, know what's kind of going on in the community, people recognize those organizations. When they see those flyers or those organizations, sometimes that draws people to then come to participate in this process that they may not have been, you know, interested in it at that time.
That's interesting. Initially, it was very frustrating for people when they started these clinics, because you would have, and I don't want to, they are two separate things, restoration of rights and expungements. Those are two different things. But people would go because you announce, expungement, and you would have people from out of county, until finally they realize they need to tell people all we can deal with is Davidson County. Then you'd have people with felonies, and then they find out a general sessions judge can't expunge a felony record. You know, and it was just a lot of little, you know, it would be long lines and everything, people wasting their time. They've been better off just going straight to the clerk's office, you know, where the clerk can tell you, pull it up right then and tell you everything you need to know. I just think some of this is wasteful, but that's my opinion. That's why it's 40 of us.
Councilor Gamble, then Councilor Seward.
You eloquently stated what I wanted to say, so thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Seward.
Thank you, and thank you for lifting that up. But when we have a process that works in one way, but not everybody knows somebody missed it, we still have to find a way to get them all. So I used to run a expungement clinic in Bolivar. And it's something that is very involving, because you have to have volunteer attorneys, you have to have a space, people are there all day, you have to get the clerk to pull all the information. So running those courts, those costs money. Now, like you said, if everybody does it on the front end, I don't know about the legal part of it, but I do know that for people that did not hear it in court for people that 6 months after need to be done, they have to do that through a clinic. And those clinic, at least the one that I've been able to do, cost money to get the attorneys there, they're free attorneys.
They don't
do it
have-
for free.
I understand.
But it is a so I'm just trying to explain that that's where that is. In a perfect system, and I hear what you're saying, and hopefully we get to that perfect system, but until the system is perfect, we don't want to leave people hanging and people still going around with that record. That's what.
What I'm trying to say is almost more helpful to just say, go to the clerk's office. Because the clerk is the one that initiates everything. It starts there, it ends there. It goes through other personnel, like it has to go to the prosecutor, it has to go to the judge, it has to do that. But anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but in the beginning, if you just did what you were supposed to do in court, everybody would know you're there. Even if it's 6 months later, you would know you could go back to the clerk's office. But if everybody did what they were supposed to do, it would be no need for this. The judge would tell you, you could even say, today, if you'd like to get it started, here's the expungement paperwork. We can do it right now. We got everybody here. And they did it for a while, and I don't know why they stopped. But anyway, thank you. That's nice.
Do you want to speak, Councilor Toombs?
Just briefly, I mean, I think the money is worthwhile. I've been one of those volunteer attorneys for a lot of expungement clinics. And for a lot of folks, yes, you can go to the clerk's office, the process may be clear to some, but a lot of folks they're just not gonna go downtown to their clerk's office. They ain't going. But they'll come to the local church, they'll come to the community center and the local school and sit down and do the same paperwork. So you just gotta reach people where they are. So we know everybody's not gonna go to the clerk's office or do it the first time they get the opportunity, so we wanna catch as many people as we can.
Thank you, Council Lady. Do we have anybody else that wants to say?
Sorry.
Oh, so sorry.
Sorry. I just wanted to confirm that the traffic school is actually currently in the recommended budget.
Oh, traffic school is already in recommended budget. Okay.
Wow.
Woo! 50,000 down. Millions more to go.
Practically there.
Thank you.
And keep it coming.
What else is in the budget?
All right. I believe that concludes everything for general sessions. I am going to call Ms. Kristen Wilson to give us some information on REACH and also some ARPA General Services information, so.
Sure, well, on the REACH program, I think we're missing, there are two components to it. There's the fire EMS staffing, which I do believe from their budget request was about $750K. But there's also the mental health co-op contract piece for the mental health workers who join on that. And so I want to make sure someone maybe validates that with the health department, which holds that contract, since we're moving to the health department. I think it's about a $200K number that's required for those mental health workers. So I just want to make sure you guys don't accidentally fund one piece and not the other. So I just wanted to flag that. On the general sessions, and maybe if we spend time later on some of the other nonprofit pieces too, I want to look to Mary Jo, but there have been some other places where, as we looked at the spending of the ARPA grants that have occurred, they have not spent still at the rate that they're going to run out of the dollars. And so I think we just need to double check that. I know for Office of Family Safety, we've already been able to analyze that and see that some of their positions could already make it to FY26. Just at their current spending rate. I don't know that we know that for general sessions or not, but anyways, I just wanted to flag that for you, Mary Jo. I'm speaking really for her team's work. I'm sorry, Mary Jo, if you want to say anything further. I did want to make one last note, and particularly as we're talking about general sessions, but this applies to all departments. I highly recommend making sure you're in alignment with the department head, which I would presume would be the presiding judge for general sessions, which I think is Judge Escobar currently. When you all choose to give a department funds, especially on things that weren't on their original request list, which they went through a pretty detailed process, I believe, in prioritizing them. Departments can choose to use those funds differently. They have that discretion, especially if things come up over the course of the year. And don't forget, we have budget target savings coming on them. A lot of them are responding to increasing demands with a flat budget and then a target saving on top of that. Just make sure you're fully in alignment with them as you grant them those funds. Because I don't recall the expungement work being on their list. I don't recall some of the nonprofit alignments that are in here. Now, they might be very excited and very receptive. I don't want a disconnect to occur with you all, especially in this first budget over for, the next few years. I think you have your maximum leverage to make sure that they're in alignment with you, if that helps.
Thank you so very much. So basically, y'all, everything has to be vetted through the department heads, and we have to make sure that the department head is gonna spend the money the way that we're asking them to spend the money if we're trying to allocate money for another program. So appreciate if everybody's doing their due diligence when making these requests. All right, we are going to go into the health department. Before we do so, Councilmember Druffel, would you be so kind to pass that candy bag back to
And
sit down
I've been just real weighted
All
on
right,
this.
toss it.
M&M peanuts.
Council Lady Gamble, did you have a question?
Yes, please. I wondered if we were gonna go through the entire list in this session. Unfortunately, I have to leave for a traffic calming meeting, and I just wanted to know how far we were gonna go.
We're not gonna get through, because it's like 21.
Got an item?
Yes.
Okay, what's your item? I'll leave it there.
Point of order. We're going to go through as many pages as we can get through. It's about 5:46 and we stop at 6:30. So I anticipate we'll probably get through health, historical, and possibly human relations. But we have a very hard stop at 6:29 p.m. And we'll pick back up our next work session. And the plan is to just keep working through like this till we get through all of the requests. And then once we get through all the requests, we'll pick back up, and that very following day, we'll start on funding sources.
Okay, thank you. One that I know I wanted to be here for is parks, but we probably won't get to that.
I don't think we're gonna get to parks today.
Excellent.
Yes, because that's a little
Madam Chair.
further down the line. Yes, Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. While we're talking process, will there be a night that's dedicated, or a period of time that's dedicated to how we figure out how to prioritize? Because so far, nobody's said, I don't support anything. So.
Which is delightful.
Which is
for once.
delightful.
It's never happened before.
How along the line are we gonna talk about how to put them in order?
Yes, we could definitely include that as a part of the conversation. So I'm kind of ranking it as I'm hearing people talk and how much support things are getting. I'm making my own, set of notes, but we definitely can make that a part of the conversation. And just so that everyone is aware, up to this point, not including yesterday's conversation, so not including anything with the pay. At this very moment, we're at over 2.4 million, not including the 1 million that you said wasn't a real request, the 2 million that wasn't a real request, and not including the 125,000 for grant funding. So we're already at like 2.4 from just today's conversation. And then, of course, yesterday is either 7 million or 9 million, depending on the direction that we go in with additional employee funding. So I'm definitely keeping a running record so that we could have that conversation, Council Lady.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we go to the next thing?
Where's the candy?
I'm about to pass it. I'm multitasking. Okay, the next one is, here, we can pass this one first. The next one is the health department. So we will let Council Lady Evans kick it off with the spay and neuter clinic for $20,000. We have Councilmember Gag, Councilmember Fortson, Councilmember Coopin, I believe that's the same request. Council Lady Styles, I believe that's the same request. And I think that may be also the same request of Councilmember Evans Segal.
So we have, as a city, we have got to stem the tide of pet population in Nashville. We need pets to stop reproducing, and we need to offer owners an opportunity for more spay and neutering. Pet Community Center will offer up an additional day, I believe it's once a month. I could be wrong, Joyce, Councilmember Stiles will correct me if I am. And it would cost $20,000 to expand that option. We need it. Currently, I have had to go to Sumner County, I've had to go to Wilson County to help people get their pets spayed or neutered for an affordable price. That's it.
Thank you, Council Lady Evans. Czar Stiles, you are recognized.
Animals are.
Whatever. I got a couple of those, don't I? Okay, so, the delightful fat caucus. To Councilmember Evans' point, it is the #1 complaint that we get from constituents is about spaying and neutering. And because of capacity, we have been unable to do surgeries. And Pet Community Center is actually helping us a little bit already without us giving them extra. This just enables them to be able to add that extra time and be compensated for it. I think it's a step in the right direction. Really, the ultimate fix comes when we build the new MAC facility that Director Harrington has been asking for, and we have finally put $500,000 towards in the CSP for the design of the building. This gets us one step forward, but also a way to be able to tell constituents, we heard you and we're actually trying to make an effort. We don't have more space, but we are expanding partnerships. So I hope people will support $20,000. It's also like 3 pennies, so.
This is the Pet Community Center, so this is a nonprofit?
Yes.
Okay.
But because it's under, it would be health. So basically, that money ends up.
It's a pass through to health. We give it to
Correct.
health and health gives it to them.
Correct.
All right, Councilmember Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I just second what has been said before. I have become known to my friends and family as the.
As what?
Sorry. Apparently I'm funny.
Evans is tickled.
What do they call you?
Share at the class. No. But no, I've become known to friends and family as the cat guy. And every kitten season, every summer, I get called like, "Hey, I have found 18 kittens. Would you like them?" No, I would not.
Did you find a cat in your car?
I found a cat in my car. I get cats dropped off at my house. I get calls about it.
How many full-time cats?
Many. And I would have less if we had more spay-neuter resources in our city. And so I'm also very supportive of this and anything we can do to provide those resources for our community.
Thank you, Cat Guy Coopin. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this? Councilor Webb?
I for sure support this because my mother she's 80, had 2 stray dogs come up this year, big dogs. And I finally had to end up just paying to get it done for her because I had to keep calling and everybody was full, especially on large dogs. The little dogs are like, well, if you had a little dog, yeah, but it's the large dogs it seems like everybody was getting full on. So it was I never could get an appointment. This is a must.
Wonderful. Love it when we get things done.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Huffman and Councilor Kimbrough.
Just to add to it, this $20,000 is a no-brainer for me. We had an incident, some of y'all may remember, in my council district last fall where 20 cats were found murdered in a dumpster. Seems very preventable if we had services like this. Now, I'm not saying it's going to prevent monsters from being on this earth, but it definitely shows the need for extra spaying and neutering.
Thank you, Councilor Kimbrough.
I just want to say I support this as well. I saw something very similar in Atlanta, like where they have different days where you bring, I'm sure it's on a much larger budget though, but where you bring your animals and it's free. They have other activities going on. Maybe they can do the expungement clinic the same day. They have other activities going on at the, no, I'm just playing. They have other activities going on and all. But it's really nice and I am in support of this. I just want to say that.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on this?
Hey, Joy, get a 2-for-1.
I know.
2 for
All right. The Council Lady Evan Siegel is, I'm assuming your request is the same one?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much. Next we have Council Lady Gadd, $300,000 for to the Department of Health and MNPS. and that is to provide period products to MNPS students in restrooms. Council Styles.
Since Councilmember Gadd is not here, I will share this is one of the initiatives of the Women's Caucus brought to us by Councilmember Gadd. As you know, we did a resolution last month. So I don't have this on my list. She had not given it to Women's Caucus, but I just want to support this because I know this is affecting our female students across the county. There are several schools where kids are coming to school unprepared, and so to be able to have supplies at school that you can ask for without any shame would be helpful.
Thank you so much. Would anybody else like to speak on that?
I support this as well, it sounds. I support that.
I do. Thank you, Women's Caucus. Yes.
Council Lady Vo, and then Councilmember Huffman. I don't know if you want to weigh in on this one. Council Lady Vo, go ahead.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
Talk about period products.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've seen it with, with schools in my district where students are not coming to school because they don't have period products. And so I think it's really important that we, show our kids that, regardless as they grow and they develop, they can go to school and they have the products that they need so they continue learning. So I fully support this.
Thank you, Councilmember Huffman.
Yeah, this is also just something that's badly needed. My former job, I worked for an OBGYN specific medical record, and we went on site to these doctors' offices and just consistently seen this as a thing that was talked about amongst the clinicians there. So I am curious, the intent of, is it like in the bathroom, like
Yes.
How would that work?
So you give the money to the schools, and
Yep.
schools would have the supplies
And they
available,
would-
so you can go into the bathroom.
And then they would keep them
stocked.
and everything.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. All right.
So you don't have to go into the the office.
Yep,
ask.
absolutely. Okay.
I just had a quick question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I fully support this. No, it's okay. Sorry, my hand raised. Behind Julie, probably.
Go ahead, no.
I fully support this. I think, we know this is like a top reason that kids miss school. But I'm curious, she has health and MNPS. Do we know which department would want to administer this so that we can make sure the money gets to the right place, would just be my question.
So I think we need to get some clarity from both health and MNPS. When my thought around this was providing these products in both our school system as well as like health departments and community centers and other places where individuals who may come from like a lower socioeconomic status will also have access to these products. But I don't want to speak for Council Lady Gass, so I don't know if that's her intent, but I believe that could be why it's under both health and MNPS, but that's something that we can get clarity on. And the other thing about that as well is like, $300,000 isn't going to be enough to take care of, everyone's needs, but it's kind of, buying the products up to this amount and making sure that we have as much products, as we can get with the amount that we're able to fund. This also will give us the opportunity, if we determine that, more is needed, this will give us a baseline to start it, so.
Okay, cool.
Council Lady Styles.
Thank you so much. I appreciate responding to you.
You're welcome.
So, is it possible this could be a situation like, as we were talking about the pilot program, kind of jumping ahead, varsity, and it going into 2 community centers, but maybe like this 300,000 goes to the schools that are having the most requests for supplies, at least to get started, if that's not having spoken to Councilmember Gadd about why she only chose 300,000, but maybe there are some places that have said we really have a need for this funding and we could build off of that for the future.
But can we direct what the money, how MNPS spends that money? We can't really do that, so, right? So even if we
So this could be a partnership with health where the products are purchased.
Right.
And then products are then donated to our school system is one way we could do that. But I do think ultimately we'll need to kind of, I do think that we could look at it as a pilot because that would also help with funding. If it's not a reoccurring source, we could try to identify some one-time funding for it. But I will be following, or I will request that we follow up
Send a
with
carrier
health
pigeon.
and MNPS to get more information about how that program will be implemented. Council Lady Vo.
Thank you, Chair. Just like in our last council meeting, when we did the resolution, I know with the CRC, their goal is to have 1 million products. So maybe we can just coordinate with them, like to make sure we're getting the best price and who their vendor is and things like that. So just to be smart about as many as we can get for what we can allot in our budget.
Absolutely. That is one avenue as well we can consider. And as we are in a tight year, y'all, we are gonna have to have some tough conversations, and we are gonna have to have conversations about what funding for nonprofits looks like. So we haven't gotten to that point in the budget, but for every dollar that we're spending is a dollar that could be spent somewhere else. So we just have to, keep that in mind. I do think, especially when we're looking at partnerships, for example, if we're able to spend $300,000 and get, let's say 1 million period products, but if we're able to give 100,000 to CRC, and because they get whatever discounts, they're able to get 2 million for it, then, it's more beneficial to then partner with that nonprofit because they can leverage that and get more. Those were just examples, obviously. But as we get to that portion in the process, we will have to have some tough conversations about what this looks like with nonprofit funding. We do know that we have a group that's being led by Council Lady Allen that'll really kind of help direct us for future budget seasons, but just a process of how we're going to look at nonprofits in the budget so that it's not like the Hunger Games, and if you know a council member, you can work your way into the budget. If you don't know anybody, then you're, up a creek without a paddle. I think that's the way that you say that. So we'll have to have those tough conversations going forward. Quick time check, it is 6 o'clock, so we're going to keep working through health. Councilmember Cash, you're recognized.
Thanks. I was just going to say on the period products, which I think is great for us to fund. It's kind of like 2024, and really we're talking about this. But I would think it would have to be, kind of going back to Councilmember Evan Siegel's question, I think it would have to be the custodians that would be stocking the restrooms, and maybe there's a question of, is that something we need to add to their contract or something like that to make sure that it gets done? And maybe the nurse that's on staff there has some of these, and if she or he starts getting asked, then that's when they know that it's not getting done by the staff that's expected to stock the restrooms.
Thank you. We could definitely work with MNPS to figure out if that's, the counselors, if that's a teacher that's volunteering, or how they want to implement that. Anybody else? All right, thank you. Next one up is a MAC feasibility study by CAT member Coopin for $379,000.
It's getting worse by the minute.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And I would defer to the chair of our PET caucus, Councilman Stiles. Was the feasibility study something that was in the CSP, or was that something we wanted to have in the operating budget?
It was not in the CSP. And I will say, in general, as passionate as I am about MAC, I'm also trying to be mindful as we're talking about taking money from places that we're losing in other areas. So I hadn't touched it, but it was something that I think we should take up beyond the budget, perhaps for next year's budget season or for the fall process, talking about the CSP stuff.
So I would second that and just say that we need to continue to advocate for as much funding as we can for MAC, obviously recognizing the flat budget year, and as we talked about every dollar spent is a dollar not spent elsewhere, but I think this is another department that has been underfunded for way too long in a very large city. So I will continue to advocate for funding for it.
Is
Around the
this,
same amount of time as arts.
is this, well, Councilor Toombs, go ahead.
So I thought someone just said that we put money into the CSP to look at the, like a new location and design. So what is this?
That's, so the $500,000 we got in the CSP a couple months ago for design work for a new location. This is the second, there was this secondary study on the functionality. They had an audit done about a month ago. I think this study is in reference to some of the things that they found in that audit.
Okay,
It's not one and the same.
okay.
Thank you. So, are you keeping that request, or are you scratching that request?
I would say, can I keep it for now, but I may amend it in my updated wish list?
You sure can.
Thank you so much, Chair.
All right, next we have MAC additional staff for $150,000 for Councilmember Coopin.
Which one was that? Oh, the additional staff, so that would be, and I think Councilman Wiener and a couple others have it, but again, additional staffing for them. One of the things I hear when I talk to MAC is that they struggle to answer calls. We get a lot of constituent feedback. I'm on an email chain with a number of people who are not thrilled with the response time and the level of service, and talking to Director Harrington and others. The challenge is the amount of staffing that we have and the ability to respond to calls across a very large swath of city. So again, the more staff and support we can provide them, the better we can respond to these challenges.
Thank you. Did y'all actually speak with MAC on it? Are they able to handle that if they were to get funding for that? And the reason, I'm gonna get you in 1 second, Council Lady. The reason why I asked is because I know last year there were council members who wanted to put money in the budget for positions that they did not have the capacity to get staffed. And I know it's my understanding that they still have open vacancies right now, so we're, looking at adding positions and they already have vacancies. So I'm gonna get to you, I'm gonna call you in 1 second. But did you talk to him, Councilmember Coopin?
So for this, I didn't specifically talk to Director Harrington. These are kind of brought from multiple conversations I have, but I can get more specific details before the amended worksheet.
Thank you.
May I now answer your question, which was what you asked Councilmember Coopin?
Yes, because it was Councilmember Coopin's request.
So, having spoken to Director Harrington, these are items that she asked for this year, and they were denied from her director. So, the money for the spay neuter, these 3 animal control officers, the 2 animal care assistants. The facility is at capacity for animals and staff, but if you go over and you take a tour, all of the kennels are full, but they're still having to go out every single day on the calls and bring more animals in, and then they're just kind of figuring out what to do with it. We do need more animal officers. Part of our problem right now is not just staff, it is the vehicles, the 5 vehicles, if you remember, that we ordered during the pandemic are still not here. So, boom, great face, that's how I feel. So it is a very long process, like between supply chain woes and then the company that retrofits the vans. I think out of the 5, maybe we have 1 or 2, and we're still waiting. So you can't get animal care control officers without having vehicles. So it's not just having 2 riding in 1 vehicle. We need a vehicle for each officer. So even if we ask for these additional officers, we don't have the cars to give them. Last year when we got the vet and the techs, that was a request from Director Harrington to have them, because right now we also share a vet that goes between Williamson County's pet shelter. So having someone that can be there full-time, it is a need that we have. But again, equipment is part of the issue, but these are all legitimate requests.
And so, thank you so much for that, Council Lady Styles. And again, for the first termers that are kind of going through this process for the first time, sometimes like we have like super good intentions and we say, oh, this department needs this and I'm gonna put it in, and the department may not have the capacity for it. So even like the position that Council Lady Stiles just talked about, a licensed vet tech, that position is still open from July 10th of 23. So that position still has not been filled. There are a couple of other positions that they have from 23. So like when we're looking at trying to get them more positions, they're still not able to fill the ones. And I'm sure part of that is because of the low salary that people are
Hence the pay plan
making.
question I asked yesterday for MAC.
And to your point of like Beer Board being able to say, hey, here's another 10,000, let's get this position filled. Do other departments have that same autonomy? Because if so, like, these are very low paid positions that need to be filled. So, thank you, Councilmember Coop. And did anybody else want to speak on the additional staff for MAC? Okay, the next one is. Well, those requests, the next one was Council Lady Wieners.
Okay.
3 animal care and control officers for MAC for $114,000. The next one is Council Lady Wieners, 2 animal care assistants for $76,000. The next one is 5 animal control officers from Council Lady Wiener for $225,000. So would anybody like to speak to those requests?
No, just to ditto what we just said, which is it probably, given our budget for this year, given space, I don't know that this year we really can, even if we want to.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Or two.
All right. 611, let's jump into the Historical Commission. We have from the Minority Caucus $60,000 for a museum study to study the creation of an African-American history and civil rights museum. We have that from the Minority Caucus, from Councilmember Toombs, as well as Councilwoman Soror. Council Lady Soror, I'll go to you, and then Council Lady Toombs if you want to chime in. And then Council Lady Evans, Siegel.
Thank you, Chair. So as many of you know, we had that whole issue with the Cooping Group. It's the Cooping Group and the Swara Group. So what happened is last term we tried to do something with the Morris Building. As much as we talk about the civil rights and the African American history in this town, what we're finding out is that we don't have a central place to hold some of the things that come with it. We have the civil rights room, which is amazing, but as somebody will tell you, it's more than just the civil rights, the African American history as well. And so we started looking at the Morris Building, and that fell apart. Since then, and even before then, there's a lot of people that are talking about having a museum in this town. Some of those conversations was before I ever came to town. Some of them maybe even before I was born. And there's been so many conversations in so many quarters about, so what do we do after Morris? There's so many different places that are suggested. There are different groups looking at so many different things. There's so many historical buildings. You just have so many people talking about things in so many different places. Sometimes we're not even talking to each other. And so some of the conversation that's happened since Morris is that, and I've heard about 3 different locations since the Morris Building. And so what we're trying to do now is basically try to pull all the stakeholders together, get everybody in a room and start talking to each other in terms of what do we need. But one thing that is also clear is that we cannot have 3, 4, 5 different locations and then trying to do a feasibility on all of that. So the Metro Historical Commission presented a report to us sometime last year that was talking about civil rights here and show some of the homes and things like that. They've agreed that they can actually work with their consultant that did that for them and do a comprehensive study about what will the Museum of African American History and Civil Rights History look like? What would be a great location? What would be the cost, the funding of not just establishing a museum, but also maintaining a museum looks like? I think we don't have all of that information. So this is an attempt to make sure that we do have something that we can put before the stakeholders and something that we all can then, whether it's external funding, whether it's metro funding, whatever that looks like, give us something to to be able to work with. And some of the people that are interested in even in funding are saying, give us, sentiment is good, and we're all very passionate about this. But what are we looking at? So if we said it's the Morris building, what would that cost to get that going? If we're looking at another building, what does that look like? Would that be an ideal location for a museum? And so that's what this study is supposed to help us get to.
Thank you, Councilor Story. Councilor Sooms, did you want to add to that? All right, Councilor Evans Segal, you're recognized.
Yeah, I'm sending an email to Ms. Darby right now asking that she share a report that the Parks Department did in 2023 that actually looked at the Morris Building, Fort Negley, and many other buildings, and even set out a board structure, financial structure, suggested investment from the government on this very topic, which I think was not shared with council until today.
So it wasn't a museum, it was for office space. So
This one actually is for a museum.
Awesome.
So I'm just gonna send this right now. I think this is obviously a great idea. This report was from an outside consultant. We spent almost $38,000 on it, and it wasn't shared. And it started with the Fort Negley master plan, but then they expanded it when they realized Fort Negley wasn't gonna be big enough. It turns out that Parks didn't, in the report, find Parks property that might work, and because it wasn't Parks property, it never became public, but it does set out a lot of this. And I think my question is is historic the right place to then take this report and turn it into something? Is maybe the planning commission better, since it actually is more of a countywide plan? Who brings everybody together? I just don't want to spend $60,000 to redo a report that we have when we could take the report and start making the next steps, and maybe we're ready to take this report and start making next steps, but that's my only question.
I was not aware of that study. I knew about the study that was looking at the Morris and some other building, but that was by the administration to look at office spaces.
Yeah.
That was one that I'm aware of. But if there is something that is museum specific, then we need to at least start with that. And what I would, if Chair will, allow to do is get that report, get it into the historical commissions, and let them take a look at it, and then let them see if they have any thoughts, and we can go from there. So I'm okay with at least starting at that point. My question is, this might be finance and everybody else. If we don't get to put it in the budget, is there opportunity during the year to be able to do? Where would it be?
I think so.
Even if it's less than 60,000, if we have to do something else.
Well, what if we don't?
My initial thought is that let's get it distributed to the council members, and then you can review it. This isn't our work. This is not our last work session. So let's revisit it. Let's review it, and then make a determination on if additional information is needed, and then if we need to amend this funding request to then be a different funding request to support the next steps in the process. But I do think that we should review it first to make sure that it's the information that we need. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm supportive of this as well. Not on my wish list, but I plan to add it, although pending kind of what we learned from this conversation. I've had since Morris, and appreciate my colleague bringing that building to my attention, to the Coop and Swire Group, LLC. I've just really been very impressed by the amount of history that's in this city, and the wonderful people and artifacts and items, and to not have a home here really is sad to me. So I'm very supportive of this. I've also had conversations with Metro Historic, who shared the same kind of sentiments, that they need this kind of feasibility study to figure out what their next steps are. I also was not aware of the study that may have this information already, but supportive of taking this next step. I think it's a really, really crucial next step to take.
Thank you, Councilmember Cooper.
And if I may add, Chair just said that it was supposed to be Coop and Swire and Porterfield Group, so I'm open
Just keep
to.
expanding.
Is the icon gonna be like a cat?
It was the Swire Porterfield Group before it was the Cooper Group. We started this last term. Councilor Styles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I was just gonna say, if the information is reviewed and found that we have enough data, then we can just pop this back into the kitty.
Yeah, I haven't disowned it yet, but I have it in my highlighted red. We may not need to fund it pile,
Okay.
but once we review it, then we will come back. Yes.
I do want to make sure, so I've just briefly read it, and I do think there are next steps to funding within the report that would be necessary. And so I don't want to necessarily just write off the 60,000. I just want to make sure that we're using it
For the next step,
for
but
the
not.
next step, yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So I think once
If
we
would get it.
once we get a nice review, then we'll be able to determine if this needs to be added in the budget and under what way. So, anything else on this before we move to the next one?
I have a general question before
Yes.
we move to the next one. Tomorrow, I don't know that I'll be able to be here, so my question is how to share. I only have one item left. Hush, 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 hush. Because this is my friend telling me horrible. Just for the Office of Entertainment for $150,000. So I just wanted to put that out there to get it off the ground.
You also have
That's gonna be
municipal
there.
auditorium feasibility
Yes.
study. There are also multiple women's caucus items. You can feel free to put in Council Connect so another council member can advocate for you, or if you want to give the
trust them. Will you carry it for me?
or you can get council member. Council member. You can also send them information
my
to
best
council to Director Darby if there's some information that needs to be. You can, if you would like to write something, you can send it to Director Darby and we'll print it and I can read it on your behalf.
Record it,
So-
Joey, we'll play it.
You know that's my favorite option.
We're actually looking at technology to have a little holograph of you standing there. We'll make sure you have a little scour and you're pointing your finger where you're supposed to be.
You know,
I'll
shame
send
on
my
all of you.
recording.
I'll box on all of your houses.
So with that, everyone, instead of jumping into Human Relations Commissions with 9 minutes left, we're going to end the day here, and tomorrow we will pick up on page 9 with the Human Relations Commissions. Thank you all so much for your hard work and dedication. I'm sorry, what was that?
We could have done library in 9 minutes, all pretty much the same
We're not
one.
skipping around. We're not skipping around. Going straight down. Going straight down.
She's trying.
Yes. All right, well, with that, thank you all so much, and we will see you all tomorrow. Is it tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, see y'all Thursday.
Okay, people.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.